Okay. Good evening, everyone. Appreciate you coming out for the Yazoo Backwater public meetings. My name is Mike Reneker. I'm a project manager in the Vicksburg District, and I just want to welcome you. Before we get started, I got a couple of things to say. Number one, thank you to the South Delta High School for hosting us tonight. We really appreciate that. And also to the Warren, Sharkey, and Issaquena law enforcement officers that have supported us today. We really do appreciate that as well. Before we get started, I'd like to do some introductions. First, in attendance with the EPA Region 4, Ms. Janine Gettle, Acting Regional Administrator for Region 4, Ms. Katie Butler, Water Division Director, and Mr. Kenneth Dean, NEPA Lead. Also from the EPA headquarters, we have Ms. Stacy Jensen, Director of Oceans, Wetlands, and Communities, and Laura Shumway, Special Assistant. From the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we have Daphne Pitchford, Acting Deputy Regional Director, Mr. James Austin, Mississippi Ecological Services Field Supervisor, and Ms. Melissa Moore, Deputy Field Supervisor. And as you know, public comment during the NEPA process is critical. So we're here today to give you a little bit of information and to take all of your comments that you have. So, but before we do that, I'm sorry guys, I left you guys off. It's been a long day, people. Let me go back to the introductions. We have Robin Colosimo. Robin is Deputy Assistant Secretary to the Army, Project Planning and Policy Review, and Colonel Jeremiah Gibson, the Commander at Vicksburg District. My apologies. So now, since I've just introduced him, I open the mic up for Colonel Gibson.
All right, thanks, Mike. No one else wants to MC tonight, so you can't get fired. Sorry. Teammates, thanks for showing up today. I just got 4 quick points because ultimately I want to hear your feedback and your comments. And the first is I just want to express appreciation for everybody who set up this facility and did all the public outreach to bring you all here. That's hard work, and I just want to recognize that. So thank you to everybody there. The second is we need to highlight that this is an extremely collaborative and constructive coordination against all the federal agencies. Each bring unique perspectives and values to this process to find the right engineering solutions. So thanks to all the federal agencies that continue to participate in this process. It's important to recognize that while this is an authorized project back in 1941, it is a new project that's being presented here tonight, and so your feedback to this process is very important. But because it's new, I'm also encouraged that it uses modern engineering solutions matching with regional area developments. And lastly, I just want to say welcome to your public session here on the Yazoo Backwater, where we all collectively get to meet and listen to our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I want to talk just a minute about the rules of engagement for tonight. Number one, keep in mind that this meeting is being recorded both through video and audio. Transcripts of this will be made available to the public. It'll be on our public website. We are taking comments and questions tonight. You can also send them through emails, and the email address is right there. Or you can mail them in traditional mail to the Vicksburg District. For tonight, comments, there's going to be a time limit. So we want to give everybody the opportunity. So we're going to limit your time to 3 minutes. We'll have a clock going at the table right there, and you'll hear the alarm when your 3 minutes are up. But don't worry, if you run out of time, you can get back into the line. We just want to make sure that we cover everybody. In the back of the room, we will have technical experts. So if there's other questions that you might have, they can speak with you one-on-one about that. That'll happen at the conclusion of the meeting tonight. Finally, respectful communication. Be respectful and courteous in your interactions with others here tonight. So why are we here? It is a priority for the Vicksburg District, along with the interagency team, to provide effective flood risk and environmentally sustainable solutions to the Yazoo Backwater area. Tonight, we'll provide you a background on the proposed action. We're going to present the draft environmental impact statement, and we will receive your comments. So here is our public meeting schedule. We've already completed the virtual meeting that we held last week. We've done 2 sessions today at 10 and 2. This will be the last one, of course, tonight. Tomorrow we'll be in Vicksburg at the Vicksburg Auditorium at 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. So the draft DEIS is published and out for public review. This is a 45-day public comment period, and it ends on the 12th of August. We are welcoming your comments, and they are definitely encouraged. Once the comment period closes, the team will work together to assess the comments and, if necessary, to conduct further analysis. Responses to the comments will be included on the final EIS. Now I'm going to try to play a video from the Assistant Secretary of the Army of Civil Works, Mr. Mike Connor. So bear with me. And now I'm going to pass this off to Ms. Colosimo.
Hi, everybody. As it's been stated, I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Project Planning Review, and I work for Mr. Connor, who you just saw on the video. Our office is a small office, and it oversees the Corps of Engineers' entire Civil Works program. And because it's a small office, only the most complex or long-standing challenges, as evidenced in this kind of project, rise to the level of requiring our attention. And most importantly, it has a lot to do with the fact it allowed us to have a policy priority across the administration to relook at this situation to formulate a new solution. Overarchingly, I want to share with you that today we're at an important juncture in our progressive interagency work, and I can't say this enough. Working hand in hand with other agencies to try and reframe our solutions has resulted in this new approach. We're seeking to solve those complex problems, and it's long overdue. But I want to thank you for your time, input, and engagement tonight. Next slide. In terms of the Yazoo backwater flooding, it was those 2019 and followed by the 2020 events that really was the impetus for the administration's come together moment around in 2022. You all know the devastation that happened in 2019, and no one wants to see that 6 months of standing water again. It's a complex matter. It really reflects the need to act. Next slide. I referenced interagency collaboration, and I can't say this enough. It's been rare to see this in my career, and I think this might be the highlight in terms of interagency commitment. It's been a whole of government from the onset. 6 policy officials coming down in 2022 to walk through that discussion in Rolling Fork, to hear what the community had to say. That kicked off a discussion in 23, broadly speaking, trying to craft solutions within the implementing authorities of the agencies. We have DC, so Washington, DC, the regions and the districts where the boots are on the ground, trying to formulate solutions while hearing and understanding each other's authorities, modeling science together. Not in reaction to something the Corps puts forward, but together. And in some level, it's setting a new standard for interagency coordination. That began with substantive outreach. Many of you have probably participated in that. 14 structured engagements to date. Recurring floods were the themes of what we heard as a big worry, not repeating the 6 months of standing water, and a general frustration about the lack of collaboration among the agencies. What we overarchingly heard, diverse issues and trade-offs exist. Next slide. In terms of persistent challenges, these are the 5 buckets that we think about. It's the mitigation needs, strategy, and timing. It's the impacts to overburden and underserved community downstream. Impacts the functions and values of floodplain wetlands, impacts to endangered species and wetlands, and perceptions that the pumps will only serve agricultural production. So in the end of that, from the policy standpoint, these are kind of the 3 ways we think about the purpose of this project going forward. It is about providing that flood risk reduction for communities, but at the same time focusing on certain communities, overburdened, underserved, as well as the local economy and targeted water management operations. That targeted was key here. We wanted to focus on the residents, schools, infrastructure, supporting them, roads. I heard a lot about roads today, and commercial properties and prime farmland. And really important here was we weren't prioritizing one thing first, flood risk first, and then everything else as a constraint or an additional idea. We were really trying to consider equally all these concerns and different equities. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about today, and want to hear your good input on that process.
Thank you, Robin. Now on to Corey Winders. He is the branch chief for H&H.
Good evening. So I want to talk for a minute about the layout of the backwater area and kind of how it currently operates and when we actually see the backwater flooding. So the graphic on the left side of the screen is a pretty good graphic of what actually occurs in the Yazoo backwater. So just a real quick 30,000 foot view. It's a picture of the southern Yazoo Basin, northwest part of the state of Mississippi. So the Yazoo backwater is protected by the Mississippi River levee on the west side, protecting from flooding from the Mississippi River. Then you have a series of levees on the south and east side with the Yazoo backwater levee, the Will Whittington levee, and other levees heading up the east side that protect you from high water from the Yazoo River. So then you have the flow coming down the Yazoo backwater from Still Bayou and Little Sunflower Rivers, and it does form that bathtub effect as shown with the bathtub here when we have backwater flooding. So the gates at the bottom of the picture, the Still Bayou and Little Sunflower structures are the only 2 structures that we can evacuate water out of the backwater. So when the Yazoo River is higher than the backwater, we shut those gates so that water does not come into the backwater. And then when the backwater is higher than the Yazoo River, so the Mississippi River goes down, Yazoo River goes down, backwater's higher, we open the gates to let water out of the backwater. So it's that first condition that I mentioned, when the Yazoo River's high, when the Mississippi River's high, and we have to shut the gates and we get a lot of rain on the interior, the backwater area. That's what causes this backwater flooding. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the proposed solutions in future slides.
And now, Mr. Tim Axman from our Planning Division.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tim Axman. I'm a branch chief in the Regional Planning and Environmental Division for the Lower Mississippi Valley. My task tonight is to kind of give a brief overview of the process and the alternatives that were evaluated in this draft DEIS. First of all, the charge to the team doing this work is to develop those alternatives, evaluate them, provide information to the Secretary so he can make an informed decision. To do that, we're using a risk-informed process, which simply means we use the information we have available at hand. As information is developed over time or new information becomes available, we begin to incorporate that into the decision. Your input is part of that evolving risk-informed process. So to start that, we have a set of objectives, the very top of which is reducing flood damages, and specifically flood damages that would result from the bathtub effect that was just described. In addition to that, we want to reduce levels of agricultural intensification, and that would be the impact of land being flooded, and then the need to kind of repair and remediate that land to put it back into production. We're going to reduce that effort as well. But additionally, we have to avoid creating environmental impacts, changing habitats, modifying the ecosystem. And where we can't do that, we need to compensate and mitigate for that. And these are all specific objectives that have an interest to the federal government. The next step is to develop a set of measures or features, and those are simply actions or physical constructions that we can place within the area of impact, and we can combine those to create plans. In this case, we have kind of three sets. First one would be the pumps, their location, the sizing, the connecting channels, the capacity, the operating. Those are all kind of the structural measures we have to work with. But we also have things like low flow relief wells that would address not just the high water impacts, but what happens when the water's low. And then finally, we have what we call non-structural measures. And those are simply actions you could take where you remove things that are at risk from the risk of the water. The water may still be there, but we're going to elevate houses, or we're going to relocate houses, or we're going to flood-proof them, produce warning systems, actions that don't necessarily remove the risk, but try to take the potential for damage away. All right, so from those measures, we developed a set of 4 alternatives. The first one that we always look at is no action. What if nothing changed? And that essentially provides our baseline. What are we measuring against? How do we know how well we're doing in terms of changing things or improving things? The second 2 measures we have are water management measures, and that's where the pumps come in. They would involve the pump stations and a pair, and we'll get a little more detail in this in the next slide, but a pair of different operation schemes for those pumps, different timing. But we also include with that, again, those relief wells addressing low flow conditions, and the potential for non-structural, because there are going to be some areas that may still be flooded. And how do we deal with that? And then finally, we've got an alternative that is totally non-structural. We're simply going to kind of let the water do what it does and then find ways to reduce the risk and damage for other things. Next slide. All right. Let's talk a little bit about those 2 water management alternatives. These two alternatives, in terms of what would be constructed, are essentially identical. It's the same size pump, same channel, same location. The key difference you would see between these two is the operation windows. We're looking at different start dates when you go to a lower water elevation, and then allow water elevations to come up later in the year. And those are focused around crops and growing seasons. So it's a little balance between accommodating crops and agriculture and accommodating habitat and ecosystem. The other, I think we're missing a couple of slides. Then there's another part to those water management measures, which would be, they both include the low flow wells, and they both also include some non-structural components based on those 90 and 93 foot elevations. Things below 90 feet would still continue to be at risk, and so part of the plan would be, we're going to do a mandatory buyout of structures that lie below a 90 foot elevation, get those out of risk. Anything lying between 90 and 93 feet, we'd be looking at a voluntary, up to the owner, voluntary buyout of both structures and potentially land as well. And then the final alternative I mentioned is a totally non-structural, where it would be inclusive of voluntary buyout of either structures or land. It would include anything in the footprint of that 2019 flood. All right, now I want to turn the mic back over to Mr. Winders, and he's going to explain in a little more detail exactly what water management entails.
Okay, so just heard about the two different alternatives for the pumps. So we're going to talk about those a little bit more. I'm going to explain the picture on the right-hand side of the screen. So the inundation that is in light blue is a 90-foot elevation. The light pink is a 93-foot. And then the kind of tan or light orange color is what actually occurred in 2019. So kind of talk through these two. So like what was previously mentioned, the difference in Alternative 2 and Alternative 3 is just the start date. So Alternative 2, which the crop season would start March 16th. Alternative 3, crop season would start March 25th. Both crop season date, or both alternatives, the crop season ends on October 15th. So how will these pumps work? So what we're going to do is manage to a 90 and a 93. So the way we're doing that is we're looking at the two northernmost gauges in the Yazoo backwater. So that's Grace and Anguilla. They're the two northernmost gauges on the Little Sunflower River and Still Bayou. So when water comes through those gauges, we know that water is going to make it down to the backwater. So based on the water that we have in the system at Still Bayou, plus the water at those two gauges, we will turn the pumps on if we see water approaching 90 or 93, and we know that we'll be able to manage to that elevation. So we will not cut the pumps on sooner. We do not manage, or we do not operate any of our structures currently or future for future rainfall. We operate all our structures based on rainfall that's on the ground now. So that will not change for these pumps either. The other question that we get asked is, if we're at a 92 or a 91.5 and we see that it's mid-March almost, are we going to draw it down, get ready for 90 before March 16th? And we will not. So the water will continue to stay at 91.5 or 92 until March 16th. Again, we're kind of talking about Alternative 2. Then on March 16th, we will begin to draw the water down towards 90. So what does this look like in terms of, the 2019 event? Well, if we'd have had the pumps in place in the 2019 event, then the water would have stayed at about a 93.5. So in 2019, we got to 98.2, so it's about 4.5 feet lower than what you saw in 2019. 2020, the pumps, we would have been able to maintain the 93. So that would have been about almost 4 feet lower. I think we saw almost a 97 in 2020. So that's kind of how we would operate the pumps, when we would operate them, and kind of the reduction to kind of put it in a little bit of context from some of the recent floods you've seen. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the pump's duration and how often, how long they'll cut on. So on the right-hand side of the screen is each time the pumps would have cut on from 1979, which was the first year the Yazoo Backwater levee was fully constructed, to 2020. So the pumps would have cut on 20 times in that 43-year time span. So just under 50% of the time the pumps would have operated. And there in the middle of the screen, the median date, that's your average. So on average, the pumps would have operated for about a month during that year. So the 2019 and the 2020, you can see at the bottom of the screen, the pumps would have operated for a long time. So if you exclude those two, that average days of pumping throughout that year drops from a month to about 20 days. So then another thing to kind of think about when you're looking at this is these numbers are all based on that 20 years. If you go back and add the 23 years the pump would not have cut on, add all those zeros in there, the average day pumping per year drops to about 15 days. So that gives a little bit of context. Another thing is the pumps would not have operated from 21 to now. So you see some high numbers in 2019, 2020, 2018 would have been almost 60 days. 2021 to present, the pumps would not have turned on. So a little bit of context on when the pumps would have cut on, how long they would have operated. And I will be in the back later at the boards when this concludes to answer any additional questions you might have on the pumps and how they would operate or how the backwater would work.
All right, so that's how the actual management of the water would look. The other thing we know is that as we lower water levels, there's going to be effects to the ecology, changes in the environment. And so those are the things we have to mitigate for. The approach to mitigation is, first and foremost, all the compensatory mitigation would be secured prior to project impacts. Then the strategy for actually doing that involves a tiered approach. We'd use in lieu fee mitigation, which basically means we work with other non-governmental organizations who'd be willing to go out and acquire land and then manage it to produce that offsetting mitigation. We could go to existing mitigation banks and acquire in-kind mitigation credits from those banks. Or finally, if there's still a remaining requirement, we would develop projects that would be constructed as part of the overall water management project. And then the final thing to report out is the status of environmental compliance. Where are we at on that? In terms of endangered species, we've had tremendous collaboration in this effort with our federal resource agencies, EPA, Fish and Wildlife Service. The biological assessment for the primary endangered species is the pondberry. So that assessment is being finalized, and that will allow us to initiate consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service on how to manage those effects. In terms of National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106, we've had meetings with the state historic preservation officer and tribal representatives. We're developing a programmatic agreement, and the programmatic agreement basically allows us to move forward and then adapt as we identify any cultural resource impacts as the project proceeds. In terms of the Clean Water Act, we've been coordinating with EPA. There is a draft 404 assessment in this draft DEIS, and as we finalize that, we'll begin consultation with the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality. All right, and as always, your input is critical to working through all these coordination efforts. All right, Mike.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the timeline. As I mentioned earlier, the public review ends August the 12th. So from August to about October timeframe, the team will be addressing the public comments and finalizing the EIS. We are expecting from October to December to finalize the EIS, put out a notice of availability, the final secretary determination, and finally a record of decision. So we got a lot to do in a short time to do it. So, and with that, that concludes our presentation. And now I'd like to open the floor to comments. Keep in mind we're limiting it to about 3 minutes. Please speak loud into the microphone so we can make sure we get your name and your comments.
My name is Chuck James. My wife and I have been a resident of the Mississippi Delta for 35 plus years. And I'm here tonight to thank your organizations collectively for adapting this program. And I'm encouraging you to continue with this program. And I'm here in support of Alternative 2. And you know, as we all know, the flood of 2019 was devastating to everything in its path. I mean, it was horrible. And we have people that have opinions about wetland, and I understand all that. No one cares more about our situation here than the residents of this delta. And, you know, when you look back, you know, you see the devastation that was taking place during this time frame. This all could have been avoided, you know, and it's time now to move forward with this project. And, you know, everybody needs to talk to their politicians, you know, and let's get this thing moving. But I seem to have forgotten a lot of things I wanted to say, but you know, I do want to thank y'all collectively, and you know, think about the people that this, not just the people, I mean, but the wildlife. You know, you hear all this stuff, and it was horrible. You know, I'm a hobbyist in the photography thing. I like to take pictures, and I thought, you know, this would be a good event to photograph, get a lot of wildlife pictures. But when I saw it with my eyes, you know, it was horrible. I mean, you have deer that are starving to death. You know, the doe deer, that time of year, you know, that's when they were having fawns. You'd see these deer running around, and unfortunately, this is not a pretty picture, but these fawns would be hanging out of the back of them. They would be dead, and more than likely, that doe died as well. And so I just think we need to keep moving forward. This really hurt a lot of people. This is our home. You know, we live here. And I would like to say, this may not be received too well, but if you don't live here, I don't want to hear what you have to say. We care more about this place than anybody on the outside. And so thank you, and like I said, move forward with the project.
My name is John Crawford. I have lived here my entire life. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer. I have seen the flooding since 1973 with my own eyes. Everybody thinks a cell phone is what their world revolves around. Cell phones are only as good as the power that they use. My family's house where I grew up is powered off the Onward substation. It's 26 miles from that Onward substation all the way around to get power to Eagle Lake. To get power to that substation, it doesn't magically make electricity. It's more than 26 miles from the Vicksburg substation at Redwood in flood zones to the Onward substation. Everybody wants to say, oh my, if that goes down, you can get power from the Greenville area. Well, there's still 18 miles of electrical lines to bring power from the Greenville area to the Onward substation. So we're talking about 50 miles of power lines underwater for months at a time. Nothing has been addressed to solve that problem. You don't have power, you can't live. This whole area is rural. Our water is provided by pumps, private pumps. Without power, those pumps don't work. If you have a loved one who's on oxygen, an oxygen tank only lasts so long, so you are dependent on oxygen concentrators. Guess what? They don't work without electricity either. Well, your alternative then is generators. Generators run on fuel. You're limited by your supply of fuel. All of this comes to the fact that the house was built in 1929 with power, but yet our power goes off regularly, and when it floods, other folks, as well as ours, loses power for not hours, days on end. Not just our house, but everybody that's affected by that Onward substation, from the Onward all the way to Eagle Lake, the further you go down the line, the further you are without power. And everything I've read, nothing's been addressed in all these power lines in this flood zone, much less the roads to get someone in and out to the emergency room, much less the bridges that are closed, much less the fact that 465 from Highway 61 to Eagle Lake through the steel bow structure goes underwater at 46.5 at the Vicksburg stage. That means you're talking about 65 miles around to get to a hospital that has an emergency room right now. One way. And with the low water bridge closed, you added another 15 miles to that. Thank you for your time.
My name is Gray Wyndham. I am a fourth generation farmer from here, Rolling Fork and surrounding areas. And I just want to go on record saying that I am for the initiative, the second initiative y'all have there with, but there needs to be, y'all need to please look into changing the time. I mean, when we plant corn, I think our insurance starts March 1st, and every farmer in here, if he's able to plant March 1st, he's going to. And putting that off to the 16th of March, I think I was in here earlier and listened to the first meeting, and I can't remember, once you started the pumps, how long it actually took to pump it down to 90 feet. Was it several weeks? Something along those lines? That's a lot of time. I mean, we won't be able to get planted. And also, if you would please look 90 feet, you can go a mile right outside of Rolling Fork here and hit an elevation of 90 feet. That is, I mean, we appreciate that we're actually getting this far with pumps. But if y'all could work with us a little more and give us 87, 88 feet, it'd be great. Thank you.
My name's Jay Martin. I'm a third generation farm owner. We got a family farm now. I farm about 2,000 acres right here, and I farm 2,000 acres off Low Water Bridge Road. Back in 2019, I lost one tractor, 3 houses, 1 trailer house, 2 shops, 5 grain bins of 125,000. I lost $1.9 million between 2019 and 2020. The bill's still got to be paid. Rent's got to be paid, equipment notes got to be paid, and we still got to try to give our labor and us something money to eat with salaries. Right now, we got 2 bridges out that gets us to the 2,000 acres down there. It's 21 miles one way around. We go to Horston, you would do an average of 10 to 15 trips a day. You figure that up because we can't go but to certain places in. So you figure out what we lose in money because we can't go to the port. We have to go local. So that costs us 45 cents a bushel. 1,000 bushel load is $450 minimum per load that we're losing a day. So easily $4,500 a day. The tractor that you said that I lost made New York Times in 2019. It was all over the paper. It was everywhere. Well, people didn't realize it was a relift pump on that tractor that I couldn't get out. We had 2 days to get all of our equipment, all of our people's belongings, everything out. Nobody lives back here now. Everybody had to evacuate and nobody could come back. If you could have drove down there when I went back in a boat and I drove back in there on a tractor trying to get some more stuff out, you would have seen the deer and the coons, the alligators, everything laying in the roads, and you could have smelt it. You would have a different thought about what it does. People don't understand what it was until they experience it themselves. The 3 houses, all them people had to move out. One of them lost a car. They lost a lot of their furniture. They lost a lot of other things. We can't, with the money we lost, we can't go back, we can't fix our grain bins, we can't fix that tractor. We're still trying to survive now. 2020, we flooded down there too. In 2019, I had 4,200 acres, I was able to plant 430. In 2020, I wasn't able to plant 1,600 acres of that. That takes a toll on that you can't get back. We'd appreciate anything that y'all could do to help us. We've all experienced it, and we need help, and we need help now. We can't wait. I've been through 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, and 20. We flooded all them years. They just wasn't as bad as 19 and 20. We thank y'all. God bless, and go Trump.
I'm Reed Carter. I'm also a 4th generation farmer, lifelong resident of Rolling Fork, except for the 4 years that I left for college. 2019, as y'all know, was completely devastating. I was just graduating college, basically at the time. I'd been out about a year. And coming back to see that, I was working a different job, but my family's farm lost half of their acres. We're right here in town, some of the highest ground around. And we weren't able to plant but half of our acres. But I'm in support of Alternative 2, and I second what Gray Wyndham said about the time, though. Planting dates are crucial for us, and as he said, we try to plant corn as close to March 1st as possible. Some people even start in February just to get ahead of it. This year, about middle of planting season, the rain set in, and most every farm around here is extremely late. And so the earlier we can get in, the better it is for our livelihood. And as you know, that this whole community relies on agriculture. And so if y'all could work with those dates, and of course the water level, that would help a lot too. But the wildlife, people stress that all the time. And the deer, I mean, that was like nothing I've ever seen. Like things from a horror movie, the smells, the deer, the pigs, nothing that I can think of benefited. Maybe alligators, scavengers, some. But another thing that I think about with these dates is our wild turkeys. since 2019, or since 2021, since we have not had the floods, the wild turkeys in the Mississippi Delta have just absolutely thrived. And as you know, for wildlife conservationists, I mean, that's a huge, people are in huge support of wild turkeys, because that brings a lot of, a lot of hunters, a lot of business to our economy. And I think Delta National Forest is still closed to hunters, but they have plans to open that up in the future. And so that's just that much more business that brings this community. And things like that, without the flooding, you just see so much is improving. And when we have these floods, it sets our wildlife back like you've never seen. So thank you all for your support. We appreciate it.
My name is Lauren Wilkes Stubblefield. I am a 7th generation Mississippian. My father, every generation before me and my brother, farmed here in Mississippi. My life is full of stories, very visceral stories of these floods, going back to my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, the floods in the 20s and 30s, the floods that my parents moved through in the 70s, and my own memories beginning in 1979. There is no part of my growing up or my adult life that has not been affected by the repeated flooding. Even though I am not actively engaged in farming, my brother is. For us, Alternative 2 is the only acceptable choice. It does not fully address all of the dates and some of the other technical issues that other speakers have brought up, but it's better than the nothing that we've had. For me and my family, this is an incredibly personal project because a not insignificant number of acres of my father's property was condemned for this project and taken from him. I've been coming to these meetings for 15 years. This is the 6th time that I've come to speak since 2009. My father asked me to come and speak on his behalf because he was dying of cancer. I do not know how many meetings he attended in the years prior to that. I know that he went to Washington several times. I cannot explain to you the importance of finally bringing this project, which to you is a new project, and I understand that. I spent about 20 years as a federal grant writer and project manager. I understand that these things can be long and complex. I understand that environmental studies are important. I understand that there is an incredible amount of technical and bureaucratic and administrative processes that have to be followed. But for us, for those of us who have been born and raised here, who have lived here, who have watched families struggle, who have watched people lose everything that they have, this is not new. This has been going on for some of us quite literally our entire lives. In my daily work now, I'm a paramedic. I have actually worked up here in this jurisdiction. It is a difficult jurisdiction during the best of times. And as some other people have mentioned, it's difficult to get crops in and out when bridges are out and roads are closed or people can't get out of their houses. I would like for you to only imagine a little bit further what it must be like when someone's having a heart attack and the ambulance cannot get to them. 90 and 93 feet, that's good. That's great. And saying that you ask people to give up their low-lying houses and property, that's great too if they have somewhere else to go. I don't know what else I can say other than to please let us know how we can help you finally bring this project to its fruition and put some pumps there at Steel Bayou. The bathtub's been finished for a long time. It's been pretty wet up here since 1979. I would really like to see the future generations of my family, of my friends that still live in this area and work in this area and whose entire livelihoods depend on being able to continue to produce crops in this area. The people who come up here for recreational wildlife, whether it's conservancy or hunting, I want people to be able to continue to do those things with purpose and with pleasure. And when it's all underwater, they can't do that. And if you've never been up here when it's flooding, not that I want to ever see it happen again, but if the water comes up before this project closes, you need to come see it for yourself. You need to get out on a John boat, and you need to go see exactly what happens when that water doesn't get drawn back down below 90 feet. Again, alternative 2 is the best one we have. If the dates can be adjusted a little bit, if you can give us even 1 or 2 more feet, I cannot impress upon you the incredible amount of good that will do for this part of the country and its people. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Knott Wheeler. I'm Vice President of the Mississippi Levee Board, headquartered in Greenville, Mississippi. And this is my 30th year on the Levee Board. And we have been, we talked about this project the first meeting I ever went to, and we talked about the project in July at the last meeting I've been to. And every meeting in between. We've been trying to get this done way before my time. But anyway, we just want to thank all the government agencies, the EPA, the Corps, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, for getting together on this and coming up with a new solution that will help these people and protect their farms and their families and their houses and all their property. We would suggest alternative 2. As far as we're concerned, 1 and 4 aren't alternatives. 2 and 3 are the only ones that actually would be a solution to the problem. But the farmers that have spoken already, they've already alluded to the fact that they need it cut on the earliest possible. March the 1st would be the best, but we understand March 16th, if that's what we have to live with, that'll be great. We, as the Levee Board, we would like the compensatory mitigation required to be obtained voluntarily as a reforestation easement instead of fee title. That would give the people that own the land still control over it and allow them to use it for recreational purposes or whatever, but it would still be their land, but it would be reforested and to serve as mitigation. We want the mandatory acquisition of all structures of roughly 101 below 90 feet to be voluntary acquisition. If someone wants to take a chance, allow them to take that chance. But, well, obviously the farmers have mentioned the earlier cut-on date, and that's what we're hoping for. This project, in our opinion, is an environmental justice project. Not only that, it's an economic justice project. You've heard the stories from people, what they've lost, in the floods that they've endured. It's time for this project, it's time for this part of the world to be recognized and to be given the relief that they need. The federal government, I dare say that if 500,000 acres anywhere else in the country were flooded up to 6 feet deep, that any place else, it would have been fixed immediately. But not down here in the South Delta. And these people need it too. This project was authorized 1941. That's 83 years ago. And it's time to see it done. I don't want to, I got a lot more I could say, but the fact is, we appreciate that we've gotten to this point, and we at the Levee Board are willing to do anything we can to speed this process up and get these pumps finished. Thank you.
I'm Luke Richards from Yazoo City. I don't live here, but my career is here. My granddad and my dad's career is here as a bugman. And I support Alternative 2. I see Alternative 3 as all right. I did want to second what they've said about the date. March 1st is probably a better date. It'll take several weeks to dry out the ground. Ground doesn't just dry out magically. And then also maybe an extension to November 1st. Cotton harvest typically goes to about November 1st. I know cotton's on the higher ground, but it is something to be mentioned. I see Alternative 2 as a win, and Mississippians really deserve a win. I wanted to say that if this doesn't happen, that the economic effects are going to be felt for years and years and keep growing wider and wider, and that an already impoverished area will become more impoverished, and we really need a win. Thank y'all.
My name is Roy Nichols. I'm also a farmer, a landowner. I've lived here my entire life. Farmers have a window of opportunity for them to get their crop planted, to get it harvested, but there are also other things that have to be done, such as fertilization, soil sampling, land forming, other things to improve the land that these dates that the pump may be started and stopped might interfere with. As a farmer, I've seen what the flooding has done to these people. I'm a little further north, but when Steel Bayou has filled and backed up, I'm 20 to 25 miles further north. The elevation of my house is 110 feet. But part of my farm, Steel Bayou, backs out on. Steel Bayou also flows into Washington Bayou, which is the drain for Lake Washington. I grew up on Lake Washington, swimming, skiing, fishing. A wonderful place to live and grow up. When Steel Bayou is full, it is backing in to Lake Washington, and we're getting unwanted species of fish there, such as the Asian carp. I know of several people that have been slightly injured by these fish jumping into the boats with them, but we have kids out there skiing. We have kids riding jet skis, people on rafts. These fish have jumped on rafts, and I know of one opportunity where a man 6 feet tall, 250 pounds, was knocked into the floor on the raft. These fish are unwanted. They're ruining our lake, but more so the devastation that has been done to these counties and these people that live here is way, way too long. We like Plan 2, but we are all concerned about these planting dates and the elevation of the water, and we're excited about the pumps, and we hope that possibly adjustments can be made once we get the pumps finalized and see how everything works. Thank you very much, and thank y'all for being here.
Good evening. This is my second one. I came to the one earlier. I guess I told my wife I just like consuming information so I can decide what's best. And after sitting there, first of all, my name's Anthony White. I've been here in the Sharkey County area as an educator for 40 years. I'm a graduate of Mississippi State University with a degree in agricultural science. So I have a true love and a devotion for the farmers that feed and clothe this country, especially the ones in the Delta. When I ride up and down the highway, I can't help but admire the fields and the crops. But it's kind of a mixed emotion because my father never owned a piece of land, but he farmed all of his life. There is a lot of poverty in this area, and when you think about the agricultural industry that has pretty much taken its hold as far as job opportunities, there used to be a lot of job opportunities that were associated with agriculture, but it's limited now because of technology, and 2 or 3 farmers can farm thousands of acres now. So there's not a lot of job opportunities that's found in the agriculture industry, except for the agribusinesses, and those are areas that benefit a lot from the agriculture industry. But what was bothering me the most, I see the option 2, which everyone has spoken about, and I saw the other options, that the non-structural options. What I would like to see is something that's going to benefit the farmers, of course, whatever it takes for them to get in that field and plant their crops as soon as possible. But there are there are people who lost their homes. There's people who are still living in the flood areas who don't have resources to move or to relocate. So I think option 4 lend itself to that particular, to those group of individuals. So my point is, whatever avenue you take, try to make sure everybody has a chance to benefit. Everybody in the Delta is tied to this flooding situation, you know, and it's not just the farmers. Farmers they play a big role in agriculture, and they near and dear to my heart. But in the Mississippi Delta, as a young man said, this is a impoverished nation. This is a impoverished area, and we've lived in poverty all of our lives. Some of us, flooding has not caused some of our people to be in poverty. We were born that way, and it's been that way for a long time. So whatever you have in this plan that will lend itself to economic growth in this Delta, I would appreciate any merge that you can come up with a plan that's going to bring jobs and opportunities so everybody will benefit. Thank you.
I go ahead and end this. I'm Deborah Williams. No, I'm Deborah Chocolate Williams. And I guess I end this with Mr. White saying that because I'm one of those survivors of the flooding. And my parents, my mother's last words were that she wasn't going back this time, and she dated back to 1941. So, in doing so, when she said she wasn't going back, we didn't know that all of this took a toll on her, and we would be burying her the next year. We just thought she'll be ready to live with some of us, but that didn't happen. And I agree with the young lady that said how families have lived and the resilience that we have had. And everything that you talked about, I came this morning and I didn't see too many people that look like me this morning. And there have been meetings after meetings where we have been in the audience. African Americans has been all over, and we've been thick in the audience from Vicksburg to here. But it has drilled down to me. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. This morning I saw Mr. Shorter. I didn't see too many other people because they are at that point. It doesn't matter. I have a cousin, the Taylors. She's a veteran. She wants to go back home so bad. She's been fighting and waiting and asking questions. And it took her 2 years or so to get an answer to why they cut her gas off and she couldn't get it back on. Natural gas. And they told her they couldn't do it anymore. She had to get other lines that she had to pay for. So in all of this, people that has been part of this community for generations after generations has been the backbone to these farmers. They too have families. They too want to stay where they are. And my family, they have their little small house on their land. And there are others, my aunts and all of them have property, even though they're small. They too want to go home, and it hasn't been possible. Right after the flooding, they took out those main two bridges. That was working fine to me, but apparently something was wrong, but those bridges are still out. So my 93-year-old father, who has survived, he don't go back out to the house and sit on the porch anymore because he have to travel around and he's by himself a lot of times. This is a personal thing where the big picture is, yes, the farmers need to continue and create. But there's another piece to it, the human side, that has taken such a toll on everyone that has lived through this. And when those floodings occur, you don't see a color. You see a situation that we all working with and trying to help each other. But what happens is those from the outside comes in and they make sure that there's the haves and have-nots and how we address issues and how issues are being addressed to further along what is needed. My parents and others, and there was others, and it didn't have, I saw, like I said, it was a black and white thing then, but there were certain groups that didn't have, we had to travel from Vicksburg to Greenville to Rolling Fork to get just the necessities. So in your plan, thinking about how that's going to affect those that do want to stay. Because right now, a lot of people are moving out of the area altogether. Just like the storm, the tornado. People are not coming back because we ain't got nothing to come back to. They don't have anything, so give them that. Give them something to come back to. And my message to farmers who are big enough to do these things that they are doing and growing and producing. God knows we need some vegetables. We need those things that we don't have to travel to Walmart in Greenville to get. We need that. We need farmers. Yes, we do. But we also need, farmers need workers. And machines can't do everything. So we're at this time when I want people that's looking at me from my back to understand that this is a new day. And in that new day, everyone should be able to go home and feel like that they are able to provide for their families. And if one dies, there's someone to pick up to carry on with their families. So again, I say, however you do it, just think about the personal part and the mental health and those issues and doing and moving on to our generation after generation. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Oh.
I'm Peter Nimrod, and I'm up here because the Colonel told me I didn't speak last time, so I'm going to speak this time. Deborah, your mama was awesome, and your mama said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's the same feeling I get from her. I mean, people are frustrated because this has been going on for so long, and we get somewhere and then we get fall backwards, and we get somewhere and then somebody vetoes us, and then we get somewhere and then somebody else slaps our face. Okay, so people, it's light crowd tonight. It's because people are tired. Okay, they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. They want to see some action. Okay, and what they don't understand is you guys are getting there. We're getting there. The Corps used to walk up here and talk about a project, and then they didn't work together with the EPA or the Fish and Wildlife Service, and they said, no, that's not going to work. We're going to knock it down. To the credit of the Biden administration, Brenda Mallory with the CEQ, the Assistant Secretary of the Army Civil Works, Michael Connor, they have been fabulous. Okay, they came back, and we might have been mad one time because we thought they re-vetoed the project, but said we're going to work on this. And they did. Stacy Jensen back there she is. It's funny because I go to church and I sit back in that back row back there, and that's exactly where the EPA and the Fish and Wildlife Service are. It's great. But you guys have worked together amazingly. Okay, so we can't thank the Assistant Secretary of the Army Civil Works, the Corps of Engineers, EPA, and the Fish and Wildlife Service for finally coming together and working on a plan together. That way it's not one agency and everybody's tearing it apart. We're all in it together. So this is a totally different story than we've seen in my 25-year career here at the Levee Board. So I want to thank y'all for doing that, and that's pretty awesome. Needless to say, we want alternative too. I think the guy said it best. If that's all we got, it's better than nothing. You've heard a lot of people saying, turn the pumps on at a lower elevation, turn them on earlier. We completely agree, but if this is all I got, then we're going to take number two. Okay, we're fine with that. So it's a great project. One thing about like the non-structural alternative down there, it talks about, making whole the people that flooded up to 2019 flood. Well, y'all got to realize that was a 35-year event. I mean, there's a much bigger flood out there, and what are you going to do to those guys? So I don't think we're leaning towards non-structural, but I'm just pointing out that you set your bar too low because that's only a 35-year flood. If you're going to do anything, go to 100 and do whatever you can. I mean, it's just going to be that much more expensive to try to make a non-structural project work. And then just some numbers, kind of a recap. When we had the virtual meeting last week, we only had 11 comments on the chat room. All 11 were positive for the pumps. 8 mentioned the alternative 2. And today, we've had 35 speakers. And where some of them might have been a little questionable. One was kind of not really saying anything as far as with the pump or not the pump, but pretty much the rest of them all in favor of the pump project. And most of those talked about alternative 2. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at numbers. And we're going to get hammered by the environmental groups nationwide, they're going to send you guys 100,000 emails. They're going to look exactly the same. They're going to say the same thing, and it's going to be misinformation. It's not going to be right, and they have convinced their membership to just click and send, and that's what you're going to get. So we're going to look small compared to the horrible 100,000 number that you're going to get from the environmental groups. Just keep in mind, this is where the rubber meets the road right here, okay? And these are the people who actually live here and have dealt with it, and they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. They're ready for some action. So know that when you came here, it was pretty much unanimous that they want that alternative too. They want a pump, not only for the farmers, but for the wildlife and for themselves, for the homes, for the roads, for everything. It's a game changer. It is an environmental justice project, no question about it. We are an impoverished minority area, and our people are tired. They're tired. If you say, hey, there's another public meeting, they're like, I've already been to 10. Why do I have to come to another one? Right? I mean, I've already told them a story. Everybody knows it. Why am I going to say? Why am I going to rehash a story? Nothing's going to happen. But I think they're wrong, because I think you guys are going to make it happen. Okay, so I hate that the EPA and the Fish and Wildlife Service are sitting in the back, because I think y'all deserve to be up here in the front. Really do. Stacy Jensen, was working for the Assistant Secretary of Civil Works, and now she's working for the EPA. So that's great. Okay, but I want to thank y'all for jumping in and building this plan with the Corps of Engineers. And you guys have done a great job. I'm looking forward to getting this comment period over with, finalizing this report, moving forward with construction. So thank y'all and carry on. Appreciate you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, and with that, we will conclude the meeting tonight. Keep in mind, we still have the comment board. I mean, we have the comment table, so you still can put in your cards here. We have our poster boards in the back, and we have our subject matter experts. So feel free to visit with them, ask your questions. And with that, Robin, you have any closing comments?
Thanks, everybody, for your time, your passion, your knowledge. This has been incredibly valuable to us over the day. It's been quite an interesting day, and we look forward to another set of sessions in Vicksburg. At the end of the day, it is about observations and personal observations that inform action. And so, Mr. Nimrod, I really appreciate the interagency comment. I've said it a number of times today, but it's true. I mean, you don't get to see this kind of interagency work together. The reason folks are sitting at the back is because they have to be arm's length on what they need to do now, but they were at the table up the stage they could be to help us think and challenged us to think broader and encompass each other's science. And so I think we all actually learned a lot, probably overdue in some ways, so thank you for the comments.
Three quick thank yous. So thank you for the interagency support. Thank you for showing up and participating in this session. And thank you for welcoming me to the Vicksburg District. Appreciate you.
And with that, we'll close out. Thank you, everyone.